Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee and No Code. This week, we've got a very special guest, Steve, who's the CEO of Messagepoint, one of our critical and amazing partners in crime in changing the world of technology and driving communications and PDFs and messaging and everything else around this. So Steve, just real quick, if you could do your introduction for the audience, that'd be great, and we'll get started. This can be fun.
Absolutely. Steve Biancaniello. I'm one of the co-founders of what was Pernova, now Messagepoint, and I am in the CEO role. And Gary, I want to thank you for legitimizing my need to drink caffeine afternoon time. So this is great.
What number cup is it for you?
If I said it and you know this is recorded, I'm going to have a physician that's going to be mad at me. But let's just say it's greater than three. It's greater than three.
Okay, yeah. I think we're almost tied there. That's good. I'll say the same thing.
I think that's why we hit it off. There's caffeine flowing through the veins.
Awesome. And Steve, like myself, I love your introduction when we've met in the past, which is you're an engineer by heart. And that's the way I've always introduced myself, first and foremost, as an engineer. Give me your definition of engineer. Tell us your background, how you got to where you are today.
Happy to do it. So I'm going to throw it back to my alma mater first. So over 35 years ago, I entered the system design engineering program at the University of Waterloo. And I remember the way they described it. They wanted to position an engineer at the interface between society and technology. And they were emphasizing this interdisciplinary approach, systems view, holistic, expansive thinking. And honestly, that stayed with me, Gary. And no matter what the problem is in the ecosystem, there is always this ability to step back. So I am a classic systems engineer. I'm trying to look at the whole system. In terms of the origin story, I can probably do it pretty quickly in under 5 minutes if you'll indulge.
Please.
I met a fellow engineer. So again, we packed together, as you know, at one of Canada's 2 national railway carriers. And through a set of circumstances, we ended up going to a really small company that was in what I would call the document space. And then both of us ended up going to a much bigger company in the customer communications management space. So that was my first real, cut your teeth exposure to all things print and mail. And so I think much like yourself, engineers like to use the word engineering. I remember on the back of the original business card, output engineering to improve customer communications. And then we were looking for a rally cry when we decided, we've been doing this work in delivery and we thought we got to do this a different way. Like engineers look at things and they're intrigued by some stuff and they're irritated, right, by the inefficiencies. So we thought, doing it a different way means doing it our own way. So in November of '98, we formed Pernova. What's in the name, right? New print innovation, and that got the ball rolling.
And Steve, I shared with you my earliest journey, and my definition engineer is always solve problems. And lazy in doing so, meaning if someone else already had solved that problem, use it and solve the problem that no one else has solved before. So very different for me from the developer term, which basically to me means write code. And so it's interesting that the engineer in me, I think it was 1996, we were providing a web-based system for Smith Barney advisors to look at their mutual funds and hypothetical, what if they invested, their clients invested, and graphs and charts. And we needed to get it to be a PDF for the client to print and to view. And so my earliest phase in PDF was there was a product called Distiller, which was nothing but a print driver. It was literally, you had to print to it, right? And of course, we did everything you shouldn't do, which was let's install Microsoft Word, run it on the server. Let's actually have a DCOM component listening and start up Word and then automatically send it to the printer and generate it. And this was in production for years and years, generating, 10,000 statements a day. But it just highlighted there was such a gap in the communications aspect, the customer communications gap. The product didn't meet the needs. And that's what, so you saw that yourself through that journey? Is that what you?
Absolutely. And, our rally cry, my staff have heard me tell this story 1,000 times, but it's worth sharing with you. We, remember Tom Peters, management guru, In Search of Excellence, all that stuff. Well, anyway, he had this great quote. He said, advantage comes not from the spectacular technical. It comes from this persistent seeking of the mundane edge. So here we are, 2 engineers looking at print mail. It's about as mundane as it gets, right? It's run in the cellars of a lot of buildings. People open their mail. They don't think a lot about it. But it's exactly what you said, Garrett. There was this wealth of opportunities to fix things. There were so many WTF moments on why are people doing this way? And so we're sitting here at the end of the last mile looking at composed output. So you start asking questions. Well, how did this output get composed? And I think you and I hit it off because there was this moment where you realize there's a tickle in the brain. You got to shift left. Okay, the software that produces that. Oh, there's some big companies out there doing it. It's really technical. It's harder than it should be. Okay, why was it designed that way? Well, there's a bunch of information and graphic designers. Did their designs get compromised by the IT people that couldn't operationalize the communications? Well, go a little bit further to the left. What was the strategy behind that communication? And how many people are paying attention to the content? So we forced ourselves as a company to shift left over about a 10-year journey. And we were eventually able to get involved in everything from soup to nut, right from ideation through to distribution. And so you did impress me, Gary, because you knew householding, consolidation, pulls, suppressions, audit and reconciliation. So we geeked out together on a separate conversation, but that was all the stuff that we, worked on solving, honing our craft and forming an opinion about the third-party software that we ourselves were using and starting to feel uneasy. And that, of course, led to an aha moment, but I'll pause.
That's yeah. So for those who don't know the term household, it was so funny when Steve mentioned, like, I know this term. It was there was a point in mutual funds where the attorney generals were coming after mutual funds because they weren't grouping together the fees in order to give a discount based on a household. And so I learned the term householding through regulations, and it was all around how do you group together based on address, and maybe there was a typo in the address, so you got to do some fuzzy match, and you got to get, and you basically grouped it together. In your world, householding was, let's reduce stamps. Let's actually reduce the cost of sending mail because we could send one letter instead of five if they have 5 accounts. And to me, it's all scowl. It's all reuse. It's all play. So Steve, give me the message point pitch. I mean, look, you're leaders in your space that you are. The customers that we have together talk amazing about the solution and what you built, but give me what you built. Where is it going? Where do you see? I'd love to hear more.
Absolutely. I'm going to answer that with the aha moment, because you had your own, right? When you decided enough with long form coding, the aha moment for us was 3 customers in a span of about 6 weeks coming to us independently and saying, we like what you do. You're helping us implement stuff. You're using the tools we own, but I just want to insert my own sentence into this statement. And I want to control the experience. And I don't want to have this unhealthy codependency with IT and have this turn into this massive project. Or, hey, I know my content better than anyone. Why do I have to write it in a spreadsheet and hand it off to someone else? My former business partner and I took those calls to action, went to the 2 or 3 of the leaders in the space and said, hey, people want to self-provision. They want to do this themselves. Your tools are kind of hard. Can you make them a little bit easier to use? Can you change the UIs and change your focus from, the IT user, they have their place, and make it about the business user, be business user centric. We were dusted off pretty summarily by, the 3 companies we approached. After the last rejection, literally 24 hours later, we said, okay, we're going to go build Messagepoint. So what is Messagepoint, right? It's a business user centric content management system. It's this notion of an intelligent content hub. So it's got the typical, call to arms on AI infusion. You've got to be smart about content. But really, our focus is allowing business users, content curators, to create these awesome, hyper-personalized experiences across print and digital canvases. So before you think about a communication, you think about the content that goes into a communication. And I was just pleasantly surprised as I got more acquainted through our work together, Uncork and Messagepoint, to see some things draw out. So for me, I looked at Uncork and thought, what a wicked paradigm shift. You're getting people to go from long form coding to low code, no code. We're trying to get people to make that paradigm shift from being document centric to being content centric, modularized content management, right? Because it's like a building block. It's like a Lego brick that you put together, right? You need the content snippet. So that was one. You serve 2 communities, IT and business users, right? And for us, right, giving IT users headless access to content because they want to build apps and they want to build experiences, but allowing business users to have a low code or no code experience managing the content. You're a cloud native solution, right? You're up there promoting stuff in the cloud, and so are we. And then lastly, just this notion that we both are passionate about delivering personalized, friendly, consistent, fast experiences, this notion of going faster. So I think it was a really great meeting of the minds between our 2 companies on those principles alone.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's this balance. As a CIO, I've been on the other side of this where you find out the business created a shadow IT team, and just like my feeling on this, and I've been pretty negative on the term citizen developer itself as a term, like that term itself, and maybe it could be citizen engineer or business engineer would be a better term. Business engineer would probably be the right term, but It was always the business never said, I want to build software. They were just being told no. They were
Right.
being told no, they can't. There's no budget. There's no time. What are you going to drop off? What's the prioritization? And solutions like yours and ours, which enable the business to participate at a level which makes them engaged while keeping the controls there. This is the piece that I hear Microsoft talk about. 500 million apps are going to be created in the future in no code, low code solutions. And it scares the hell out of me because I was on the receiving end of every SharePoint piece of garbage app and this app and the other ones out there. And like it's handed to you as a CIO and said, hey, we kind of built this 1.2 million lines Lotus Notes app and the business did it. And it's not that they didn't have the right ideas or right goals or like it was uncontrolled, written poorly, and had to be scrapped. And it was unregulated. There's no logging, there's no security, there's no checks of vulnerability. All the illities are gone. And I'm assuming in your space, like so that's what I love. So in your space, the word illities to you and the security, the reliability, the composability, the usability, all that are things that you have to deal with all the time. I'm assuming that's your drive.
Absolutely, every single day. We play in very highly regulated spaces. So when you think about financial services, healthcare, insurance, and even the print service providers and the BPOs that service those same verticals, a lot of what we do is around compliance, regulated communication, and having those tight controls. But an interesting thing surfaced, Gary, and I saw it in your platform and I saw it in ours. We both have these decision engines that allow for fast processing that create results. So a business user can have that instant moment of gratification, right? They may be unsure, did the controls stick? But in our case, you do this round trip, the business user immediately sees the result of the thing that they wanted to insert into, a statement, the message that they're trying to curate. So they immediately feel empowered. They feel, hey, that turned out right. That's going to look right, whether it is a rendition for a printed page, whether it's going to go as an email, whether it's going to be an SMS. And so by completing that round trip in the moment, and allowing assisted authoring to democratize some of that knowledge, we close the gap. They cut the cord. They said, hey, IT's got bigger and better things to do. I like that I can do this myself. I like that your system is validating, like in seconds, this is what it's going to look like. And they got confident. They took back control of their content. And all the use cases that our two companies have done together, it's this fast cycle where less technical people can accomplish way more. They can build the apps and not worry so much about some of those illities, as you talked about, because they're there. The system's got the guardrails.
That's to me that's the key messages around that concept of like there's a tweet that someone posted and she goes, I spent 4 years computer science in Stanford and I spent the last 2 days moving a button around the screen. Like that to me, there's 24 million engineers coding in throughout the world every year, 500 billion of expense in generating ancient Greek like code for doing things, even what you're describing, which could be content management systems, it could be scripting, could be generating print statements. But the reality is when you think about that, if our solutions do 90% of that 24 million engineers worth of work, and they're using it, by the way, and their business is using it and getting the business engaged, empowered with the controls in place, I just look at like, what could those engineers have been creating? What could they create? And it's not 500 million apps that need to be built, by the way. So if you look inside any bank, any insurance, any government, that you could basically break down the number of apps needed to power those institutions to tens. Not, when I was at major Fortune 50 companies, we had thousands of apps, and all we kept saying is there should be maybe 100 to 200, not 8,000. There shouldn't be, you don't need 500 million for sure. And it's interesting that space there, but it's what you did. It's empowering the business to step up and take ownership in controls, with the controls in place, with the IT involvement, with those controls, letting IT do what they do best, which is they're probably doing your integrations, getting your data in, all the aspects of security and making sure. And it's a great space to be. And I love the message. And Steve, what I like best is, not just that you're an engineer, you built a solution and solving a problem that you lived through, that you saw. I think that's the key message is I spent 25 years living through these issues, seeing them firsthand. I tried every single low code tool that was out there before creating the no code version of this and seeing the good, the bad, mostly the ugly, what was there. And like, it's interesting to see like the difference there. And I had mentioned this to Steve, like we work with, when our first customer came to us back in 2017 and said, you got to generate a PDF, again, we're engineers. We look to see what's out there. Great. There's PDF fill technology. Let's use it. And it worked. We went live. It was great. The next customer said, we need more advanced PDF. And so we found a different solution. Third customer said another PDF. So we plugged in a different solution. And we finally realized that, you need to enable best in class generation of content. And that's where, we have partners like you plugged in and our customers working together. And it's an amazing story because it says, here's where you do this best. Here's where we hand off to you. Here's the integration point. And the customer wins, which is, I think, that was the thing that I personally like, I always felt like I was becoming an attorney instead of a CIO in my life because I was defending and always on the defensive because you're always late and over budget and but the thing that no one ever talked about in technology was value. And I think we're coming to that place right now in the market, which is, I always have this wish to say, what if the business, and this is, I'm curious what you think would happen in your space, but I'm assuming you're dealing with large corporations, small companies, medium-sized, and
Yep.
And there's always an incumbent there doing content. There's always there's not starting off fresh. There's very little greenfield, and so you're always coming in, and I'm assuming, Steve, you're battling. You're out there and you're fighting and battling, and then there's always this incumbent. And I always wonder, to me, I would love the day when the CEOs tell their technology leads, you're forgiven for all past decisions and just set us in the right direction. So wipe the slate clean. Just forget it. I know we invested, tons of money in this direction here, but it's not live. I mean, it's not in production. It's not working, and it's painful. And so I'm not going to hold you accountable for that decision you made years ago, and it's stopped going down that direction. What's the right way forward? And that's where I think we win, because that's where I've seen you win in every bake-off, and we win in every, that's the wish that I have in the business world, which would be a fun what if scenario. You could do the wavy lines and see that. But
I think cool. You hit on a theme and a constraint that we face in the customer communications management space. There is inertia. One of the most popular decisions is the do nothing decision, because there's fear that you're going to be chastised if you move, to the right answer, the thing that drives a more compelling next gen experience that you intimated. We've both looked at and maybe criticized legacy systems for the things they do to hold you back. But more and more of our clients are now at least peering over and saying, okay, hang on a sec. Maybe I have to jettison some of this technical debt. I have to think in fresh and new ways. In our case, content is stored in all these operational silos. So when you come in and you say, hey, we want to aggregate that content in an intelligent hub. We want you to have to do the work once. We want to think about a different way to store the content itself, right? Just put it in a way, and we've got a couple of patents just for how we manage content. So that's one step. Content is king and queen in our universe. So we sit there and we say, you're looking at a document, right? In the future, that may not be the thing. You talked about your PDF. Push a PDF to a mobile device. It's not a great experience if it's 300 pages, right? You can't get through the discoverability, the navigability. But if you push the right content snippet and it's the very thing that somebody needs, and it's personalized and it's relevant and it's compelling, now you're getting a response to a call to action. So if you have to then convince those, decision makers, the tool you currently have, either it needs an upgrade or you need to get off it and maybe move over and think about content in different ways. So now come to our joint story, right? You have top shelf people, Gary, and I don't say that with false flattery. You know what you know about accelerating data capture and making, processing automation go faster. And so in some of our joint solutions, you handle that beautifully and you give us what we call a driver file. That driver file enables us to do so many things with variable content and to make sure that the messaging is relevant, going out at the right time, the right channel, the right touch point. And so those experiences typically for us have been in servicing communications, right? We know the customer. And if you know the customer, you better demonstrate that you know the customer. So for us going forward, I'm going to go to something that Roger Martin said in his newest book. When you talk about innovating inside the brand, it's like a new way to think. I hope I get this right. It's something about making sure that your next flavor of your product or feature takes on the cumulative advantage of what you already offered. So for us, we're already obsessed about content. So what's the next step for us? Create even more APIs, open up even more intelligent content services. Whether or not the content starts out in Messagepoint, just give us your content to look at and we'll discover smart things, and maybe through the wonderful marketplace that Uncork has set up, expose those content services to some of our joint clients.
I love it. That's amazing. And what can I ask you, what is your favorite book? What would you say is the book you reference most as a leader?
So truthfully for me, and this is, I can't remember the exact title. It's like second in command. It's the story about the person that sits next to the CEO that might get tapped to be the CEO, because it was 5 years ago. I was, the delivery guy inside Messagepoint in Pronova, and that's where I lived, and became very obsessed about making sure that I could take these sales visions and bring them to light. It was a great primer for me because it allowed me to make the transition to CEO with a lot of warning, caution, humility. It's like you support your CEO, but if you're being groomed or you have to jump to that, here's some things you need to worry about.
I like it. What are the in the startup world that we live? Can I ask you, like, so the ups and downs of being a CEO in a growth company? What do you think? What's your
Well,
yeah?
I mean, we joked, right? I think we would both classify ourselves as hands-on operators. You've got a much bigger entity to deal with, and I think mastering delegation and trying to make sure that you move the decision making to the right places. I think I've got a lot of learnings that have gone on. We're about to enter our 25th year of business, just around making sure that there's the right culture that continues to thrive on innovation and not become complacent. And just not fearing challenges that come up, reinventing yourself. We made that big transition from a services company to a software company. That was a big leap. And then moving to the cloud early as we did. So not fearing some of those challenges. I think if I lose that, then I need to check out, right? If I lose my fear of being in it for the battle and trying to get to that, people set the bar low in our space sometimes, like, hey, what's the next best message? What's the next best event? What's the next best product? For me, I love that some people are saying, what's the next best experience? That drives us, right? That's holistic for me. The whole company needs to be thinking, it's not a word or a phrase, it's an entire experience. That's our reason for being. So for me, that's the counsel I give to startups as well as mature companies, right? You better help your customers drive their next best experience.
I love the concept is focusing on that customer, understanding their needs, projecting their needs into the future, as to say, here's what they're going to be, here's where they're going to want to see, here's the experience they're going to want to see. And to me, it's the role of an engineer, in my mind, Steve, is to show the art of the possible. It's let me demonstrate to you. So Steve and I were joking, we're like, we might come back at a future time and we would both do,
Exactly.
we'll build an Uncork app talking to Messagepoint without any code and with all the content and make it beautiful. And it would be maybe the first time two CEOs actually do the build, which would be really fun. But you were right. Like I love still building things. And so the first version of Encore, my CTO and I actually built. We created that and went live. And since that time, there's many better engineers than us that have been replacing that code and driving it. But I celebrate every time I see it. It's like I hold myself back when we're meeting with a client that I try not to jump in to do a demo too quick, because if I jump in to do a demo, I might build something in a few minutes that is exactly what they needed. They've been waiting years for. It's like so we'll do it, but it's fun. It's that's amazing, and that's a great recommendation and leadership, and learn the role, step into the role. I think that's amazing. And just Steve, like it's great partnership working with you and your team. So we're thrilled. That's one of the best parts of my job, is meeting amazing companies and technology, because as a CIO, I used to manage 1.2 billion as a CIO before this, and that was my spend every year. 1.2 billion dollars a year we were spending, and I just kept looking for, where's the value? Where do you get that back? Where's, how much are we spending? And to your point on print, we actually at one place we found that the print shop was on like the 30th floor facing the Eiffel Tower in Paris, like the most expensive real estate you could imagine. It wasn't the basement, as you said. And you have to question those decisions. And again, like it would be great as a clean slate and say, whoever picked that, doesn't matter, let's just move it to the right place.
Move it to the right
And
place.
move it to the right place. And that's great. Steve, last minute, any words of wisdom for the audience? Anything else that you would share?
Well, I would say that the future of communication starts with content, right? Just content that is consistent, that is of the right quality, that is managed in the right ways. And if you get the content right, that is your essential building block. So for us, any experience you want to drive, any kind of communication, when you just get to really being reductionist about this, think about a sentence, a phrase, or whatever, getting that content right will absolutely impact the experience you're trying to help your clients get to. So for us, be content centric, be content obsessed.
I love it. Content centric, content obsessed. I love the message. And Steve, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us today, and really appreciate you being on the show. And hope everyone has a great day, great weekend. Thank you, Steve.
Cheers, Gary. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Cheers. Take care.
All right. Bye now.